Where are we?
We're here.
We're here. Okay, we're here.
We are.
We are here. Okay, we're here. All right, there's a couple other people here as well. Have I got
Ooh,
chocolate on my chin?
I can't see anything.
I was just eating a chocolate biscuit, and I was like, "Oh, hang on." Or is that just a
I love a
mole?
chocolate biscuit.
Oh, it was a quadruple chocolate biscuit.
Mm.
It was a chocolate biscuit with white chocolate chips, milk chocolate chips, and then dipped in dark chocolate.
It's just way too indulgent for me, but I do appreciate the goodness of the chocolate.
Right. So here we are again.
Yeah, with
Again.
6 people. Hello, 6 people.
Hello, six people.
Do you, w- do you guys
She.
want to tell us
Oh,
where you coming from?
oh, Peter says it sounds like a tam tam, a Tim Tam. So, Peter, are you from Australia or New Zealand? That you know a Tim Tam? Hi,
Yeah,
Sport Bearer. Good morning,
all my
afternoon, evening,
Aussie
all.
and Kiwi folks used to bring those Tim Tams.
So we actually had, just as a segue, we had a blind tasting competition in my team in Amazon for Tim Tams versus Penguins because the Aussies swore the Tim Tams were better, and obviously the Brits swore that the Penguins were better. So we had a blind taste test. Which one do you think won?
Tim Tam.
Penguins.
Ooh, interesting.
All of the Aussies thought the Penguins were Tim Tams. So I
Fascinating.
felt very validated. But that was the type of thing that I used to do in my team. We used to blind biscuit taste tests, anything to resolve. We used to come up with the funniest things to kind of resolve differences of opinions. But that was possibly my favorite. Right. Yes, it is Labor Day. Yes, it is Labor Day. I forgot about that. So, yeah, maybe not so many people today, but hey, we're here, you're here. So, even if there were only two of you, we would still be here to answer your questions. So, why don't we just kick off, Yevgeny, and whoever shows up, shows up.
Cool. All right, folks. Well, let's kick things off. So, welcome to the weekly Day One Careers free Amazon interview coaching session here on YouTube. I trust that you probably know who we are, seeing as you're watching us on YouTube, also possibly on LinkedIn, and also possibly on X, which also well, seems to be working.
That
My
seems to be
X,
working this week. Yeah, I will just
yeah,
pop on to LinkedIn and make sure that's working as well. But whilst you go
yeah,
on, so you
exactly.
carry on.
Cool. So, but for those of you who are new to us and everything that we do, so here's a quick bit of intro about Gigi and myself. So we are both former Amazonians. We used to be hiring managers, interviewers, and believe it or not, people actually do a lot of real work on top of hiring and interviewing candidates at Amazon. So both Gigi and I were senior marketers, and on top of that, Gigi was also a bar raiser, which I'm sure you guys have heard loads about. I've never had her on any of my loops, but having got to know her as my business partner, I really wish I did. Anyway, so at some point in time, both Gigi and I, in our own ways, recognized that there's a whole bunch of candidates out there. Maybe you guys are some of those that have absolutely outstanding functional profiles and resumes, but you have a good chance of bombing the interview due to the lack of interviewing skills. And then on the flip side, candidates who have had expert coaching and training tend to come in also with great functional profiles and actually have a better chance of getting that interview. I started actually experimenting with this, believe it or not, during some of my interviews, phone screens in particular, um, rather than simply not progressing the candidate through a first phone screen, I would give the candidate some coaching, and then I would actually progress them to the second phone screen just to see what happens and if just a little bit of coaching has an effect. And lo and behold, just like with most of the skills in life, it does. Obviously, it's not a replacement for having the right qualifications and the right functional skills and the seniority for the job, but interview skills training does help. So both Gigi and I established our own interview coaching and preparation businesses. Gigi originally started the Amazon Interview Whiz Academy, so she is the one and only original Amazon Interview Whiz. And I started Day One Careers, and then at some point in time, one candidate that worked with both of us told us that because apparently we were the most reputable people in this niche industry, she said we should meet, and so we met, and then I think within the next week, we decided to merge our businesses and we merged under the Day One Careers brand. And here you go. So we are here, folks. If you know anything about us, we do a lot of things for free. We offer these sessions weekly for free. We've got lots of freebies, which we will all give to you at the end of this session. So do stay with us. We also sell a combination of a course and AI system together, in which we call Amazon Interview Success System, which we believe is the best Amazon prep system in the industry. But in this session today, we're here to answer all of your questions about Amazon behavioral interviews. So if you have a question, there's a chat box here. So I believe if you're on YouTube, it's the chat box. If you're on LinkedIn, how does it work? Do they leave a comment?
Yeah, you just leave a comment underneath the stream. To be fair, I think it's just me and one other on the old LinkedIn stream. But if you are that other person on the LinkedIn stream, you just need to click a comment underneath the stream and it will flow through to us.
Exactly. And we're going to see it here. We're going to bring up all of your questions on the screen for everyone to see. And we're going to do our best to respond to all of your questions. Now, to make sure that this session is working for everyone, we have a couple of housekeeping asks. Number one, if you could, please, if you have a long question and you are asking the question on YouTube, split it into parts and then do part one, part two, part three. You will see that the YouTube chat box will limit. It has a limit on the number of characters. I have no idea what that limit is, but just do it that way, and then we will be able to locate all of the parts of your question, and we're gonna bring them on the screen. The second bit of housekeeping is broad versus specific questions on interviews. So for very, very broad questions like, do you have any tips for my upcoming loop with Amazon? We will have to refer you back to our YouTube channel, where we've got loads of videos that cover all of the broad topics on Amazon interviews. And then if you have something very specifically functional about your upcoming interview, like you're interviewing for a data center construction manager, then unfortunately we won't be able to answer any of those questions because Gigi and I don't really know much about data center construction. I don't know. I don't know, Gigi, if you know anything about
I
building
might
data
I might
centers.
soon, because someone's trying to build a data center in some farmland about kind of half a mile from where I live. So you never know, I might become an expert shortly.
Exactly. So, folks, until Gigi has that data center built next to her, unfortunately, we won't be able to answer many questions about any niche jobs at Amazon, of which there are thousands, but anything else and in between, and anything that relates to behavioral interview questions, we're very happy to answer. So, have I missed anything, or should we just get into it?
Let's just get into it. I can see a couple of maybe one question there. So do folks just bash down your questions. Honestly, there's no silly questions. We will do our best to answer absolutely everything we possibly can answer. Anything we don't have facts about, we will just share our opinion based on our experience. But please do just drop your questions down. We're here for an hour. If we don't need an hour, that's fine. Everyone can kind of go back to their Labor Day or not Labor Day, depending on where you are in the world. And there's no chicken in the oven today, Evgeny. I know you'd be concerned to know whether there is or is not chicken, but no chicken today. I don't know what it
It's a
is
no,
because Paul's
it's a
here
no
and he's.
chicken day.
It's no. I don't know what it is day because Paul's supposed to be cooking dinner, so it will probably be a toasted sandwich at 8:30. Right. Should we get to it?
Yeah. Do you want to pick
Let's
the
get
first one?
to it. Yes. Let's do that. By the way, just out of curiosity, Peter, Labor Day in the US. What happens? Is it just like a day off work, the way we would just have a day off work here on a normal, what we call bank holiday? Are the shops open? Do you go have picnics? Like, what does Labor Day feel like in the US? Tell me in the comments. I'm just curious, and I'll also answer people's questions. This isn't just kind of educate Gigi on US things today. All right, so oh, okay. So we just have someone we need to congratulate, which is lovely.
I
Oh,
do remember
congratulations.
Anirudh from one of the previous sessions, right? We commented on his profile picture.
Yeah, yeah, still very sharp, nice hair. Congratulations. We're delighted for you. And I guess we wish you a fantastic Amazon career. And when you start interviewing and hiring people, you know who to send them to. Congrats, man. Hope it goes well.
Congrats. Well done.
Right. Let's see what we do have here. Um, I'm not sure if this is a question. So hang on, let me just pull this up. So you've been preparing the LPs and have gone through our videos about them. Great. You've tried putting examples across the key LPs after going through the role. Okay. But preparing against most of them. Good. Okay. That sounds like the right approach. If you have a specific question, please do drop it in. But for now, I'll pop you back.
It's down. It's
Oh, is
there's
it
a
further
second
down?
part.
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go. Right. Thank you. Can you help out with some keywords that I could keep in mind to quickly understand what the LP relates to? Yeah, people always want that magic shortcut, don't they? While I've gone through most of your videos and put examples for LPs, but it's confusing. So there's no keywords. Sadly, there just is not that type of a shortcut. You just need to listen to the question. I know it might sound stupid, but it's in there. You just need to pay attention. So ultimately, there's always just a couple of words within any of the questions that really matter. So if someone says, if the question is, tell me about a time where you had to influence a colleague who didn't agree with something that you wanted to do, the key word in there is influence a colleague. So when you give your answer, you just need to really focus on the aspects of your story that are all about influencing that colleague. So I'm not entirely sure, Annie, if you have the Amazon interview success system or if you're talking about having looked at YouTube videos, not entirely clear. But the Amazon interview success system obviously breaks down the facets, and then any question that you're likely to get in an Amazon interview is going to be connected to one of those facets. So what you really need to do is create stories connected to the facets, and then so I'm assuming you've got the Amazon interview success system here. If you create stories connected with the facets, whatever question you're asked, you should be able to pull it from the Rolodex of examples in your head. If you don't have the Amazon interview success system, I can't give you any tips on how to connect the actual question to the leadership principle other than to just pay really close attention to the question you're being asked. But there's no trick words, there's no single word that's going to point you towards exactly what the leadership principle is. The Amazon interview question bank has different ways of expressing the same question, and then interviewers may come up with their own version of expressing that question. So even if I gave you words that I thought were shortcuts, the reality is that they wouldn't be shortcuts because not everyone's going to articulate it in that fashion. So sorry, no short cheat code. It's really just down to prep, reading the leadership principles, really understanding it, investing in a prep course like ours, and getting lots of insight into what those leadership principles are all about and what they're looking for. Anything you'd add, Evgeny?
Well, the one thing that I've added is just today I had a coaching client who told me that they came prepared with stories for a particular leadership principle, and then when I asked them a question in the practice, they told me a story that was completely unrelated to the leadership principle. And then when I asked them how did you prepare, and he said to me, well, I generated some questions with ChatGPT. I'll just leave it there. Don't do that, people.
Yeah, no, and folks, if you want some preparation questions that are actually going to be quite close to the actual interview questions, we can give those to you, and we'll give them to you at the end of the session. They're not the actual Amazon interview questions, let me be very clear, but they are interview questions that could plausibly be asked by an Amazon interviewer. So
Yes.
stay to the end
So
if you want that.
stick around. We'll give them to you for free. All right, let's keep going. So here's a two-parter from Peter. So I'm a 20-year IT vet. First 13 years were in enterprise tech support, and then a decade in pre-sales. I'm going for an AWS technical account manager role. Okay. Appropriateness of tales from tech support, even though it's been a while. Very foundational to my career and work styles, and matches very well to TAM role. Okay.
Mm.
I'm going to give you my point of view, and then I'm going to pass it on to Gigi because this might be a very sort of a subjective thing here. So I'm going to say that if you think that your functional experience, as far as something that's relevant to the role, was, let's say, what is it, 8 and how many years ago, I would say or 7 years ago, rather, I would say I would prefer in the behavioral interviews so that you stick to examples that are still more recent, because while Amazon will never say no to examples in a behavioral interview that have a very relevant functional context. But if you are giving those examples at the expense of picking stories that do a really good job at demonstrating your leadership principles and that are more or less recent and demonstrate your seniority, which tends to be more recent in your career years as opposed to more remote, then I would say that prioritize stories that demonstrate your seniority, as in ability to solve complex problems, whether it was a role that's very much similar to the role that you're doing or not, and prioritize those stories that demonstrate your behaviors as well as they possibly could, as relates to the leadership principle for which you are preparing the story. So that would be my recommendation. Gigi, where's your head at?
Yeah, I would agree. It's tricky because there are certain cases where in debriefs for technical roles, I have had feedback from interviewers saying, but I'm not sure if he's really got the technical skills. We didn't really cover that in the interview. And of course, my pushback will always be if that really mattered to you, you should be testing functional, not relying on behavioral to then infer functional. Um, I think if it was me, what I would probably do is start my interview by actually telling my interviewer that I'm intentionally focusing on stories from my more recent career history rather than going further back into roles that might have a greater technical fit, because I want to be able to demonstrate to you my more recent skills when it comes to kind of management and leadership behaviors. And then at least you've created yourself a reason why you haven't gone that far back in time. I think that's probably the strategy that I would employ. And then if the bar, if you know, if at debrief someone says, well, he hasn't talked about any skills that he's got associated with being a TAM, the bar raiser will have read the notes and had an interview with you, and they would say, yeah, but they did that consciously. That was a very sensible and conscious choice. And if you wanted to be able to understand those technical skills, then you should have asked competencies, functional competencies. That would be my strategy.
Excellent. You want to pick the next one?
Yes. Yes. Oh, Gigi's mom is in the house.
Oh, hello, Gigi's mom. Always
Hi,
so.
mom. Hey, mom. She loves me. It's probably she doesn't get to see me often enough, so she comes to YouTube to see me. Hey, mom. Right. Okay. Everyone say hello to my mom. Right, what
Hello.
else? What else have we got here? Oh, Peter says, "Oh, most shops are open, but there's lots of barbecues." Oh, unofficial last day of summer. Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, I'm going to pull this one up. How would you pronounce that, Yevgeny? Panjaj?
It's Pankaj.
Pankaj?
Pankaj
Yeah,
Singh.
Pankaj. Okay, thank you, Pankaj. Right, so are the remarks from the phone screen a part of the debrief? I spoke about my strongest story during my phone screen, and I am, let's see if you can find, there we go, tentative about using it during the loop. So this is an excellent question, Pankaj. So the only people that can see your notes from phone screens when it comes to loop are the hiring manager and the bar raiser. So if you were to use the same story again at loop, the hiring manager and the bar raiser would both know, because they would see those previous notes and they will see the notes from whomever it was that interviewed you at loop and you used that story for. Is this a terrible thing to happen? Not necessarily. So, our advice is always going to be, if you possibly can, come up with excellent, fresh stories every time. In an ideal world, you've got amazing stories and you never have to repeat anything. Some people can do that, but let's be honest, the majority of people don't. The majority of people do have to pull back maybe one story that they've used before. So, if you're going to want to do that, and you said it's your strongest story, if it's your strongest story, then I'm going to assume that it has different elements of different leadership principles as veins running through it. So what we would suggest that you do is you take that one story that you used for your phone screen one. Hopefully you wrote down the question that you used it for in phone screen one and can then infer from that the leadership principle that you were answering. Don't use it for that leadership principle when you come through to loop. Reshape that story ahead of loop to lean into a very, very different leadership principle. And then that way, when you do bring it back at loop, although it will be the same, we call it situation, the actual story, and therefore all of the details involved in the story will be different because they will lean into another kind of aspect of the leadership principles. And that way you can get away with telling the same situation twice, because then actually what you've got is two stories from one situation. Okay, do you want to pick the next one, Evgeny?
Um, sure. So first, there's a shout out to A, who recently got an offer at Amazon in Asia. So well done, A.
Oh.
Fantastic. Please don't forget about us when you start hiring people. You know where to refer them to for interview prep.
Yeah, and A, be more specific. What role in Amazon? Where in Asia? We love to know these things.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. So, here's a question from Stephen. Do you have any advice for pulling out more past experiences to create a story around? I feel like I do not have enough stories. Um, the thing that really helped me when I was pulling stories around, and it seems to also help candidates, is the resource that we're actually offering, where the Amazon Interview Tool Pack, where we've got plausible Amazon interview questions dotted around and grouped by the leadership principle. Because for me personally, when I read the examples of questions that could potentially be asked, my sort of brain cells, the gray cells, start working, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. That sounds like something that I would have done, and that sounds something like I did ages ago. The other thing that used to help me is looking at my resume, because when I look at my resume, especially if you haven't updated it in ages, or if you haven't used it recently, it kind of gives your brain that little jolt, because it puts you back into those situations, and you'd be surprised just how much long-term memory is stored in your brain when you just give it a little bit of associative jolt. So these are the two things that I like doing. And by the way, folks, I know this is not answering your question, Stephen, but for everyone here, guys, keep a work journal. Honestly, just keep a work journal, because you will never know when you will need it. Every big accomplishment that you have, everything that you're proud of and you're happy about at work, just keep it wherever you want. Keep it in a Google Doc. Keep it somewhere online, but keep it up to date, because one day you will be interviewing. If not today, if not tomorrow, you'll be interviewing, and you will need those that work journal, which make it a lot easier to recall things. But Stephen, for you, I would say, yeah, those are the two things that I've used. Do you have anything that works for you, or that you advise candidates, CG?
Yeah, I got a couple of extra ones. So if you are currently employed at a company, particularly if you've been there for a while, go back and look at your performance reviews. There's often memory triggers in your performance reviews, either comments by colleagues or by your manager. Another thing that I've done is I have contacted ex-colleagues and asked them if they remembered any particular projects or events that they saw me do that they were really impressed by. That often also triggers memories, and sometimes they can help you fill out the details if you don't quite remember those details. So I think those would be the two extra that I would offer up as mechanisms.
Beautiful.
Okie dokie. Okay, so I'm just going to pop up here. During the onboarding process, when do I expect my email and Amazon credentials to set up, or Teams to reach out to you? Also, do I get to see my interview brief results? No, you never get to see your own interview debrief notes. That is Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster to see what your colleagues said about you. If your colleagues want to tell you what they said about you, that's one thing, but no, you will never get to see your own debrief data. So that's that. In terms of when you can expect your credentials to get set up and team reach out to me, I don't think there's a firm timeline on that. And I think things have changed quite dramatically over the past couple of years since Yevgeny and I left Amazon. So, what I would just do if you're sitting there waiting, twiddling your thumbs, wondering when it's all going to come through, reach out to your hiring manager through LinkedIn and ask them for any of that information. If you don't have their LinkedIn, then reach out to your recruiter and see if they can give you any insight or give you the connection to the hiring manager so that you can reach out to them. Once kind of the hiring thing is done, generally the recruiter steps aside. They've got other roles to hire, so they're unlikely to be involved in it, but at least they'll be able to connect you up with the hiring manager who would have more insight into it. Um, the next one's a comp one. Do you want to do that, Yevgeny?
Sure, sure, I can do that one. Right. So my offer is slightly higher than the median rate they gave me, and they said open to negotiate. Would they change their mind if I ask for 20 plus 25% to the offer as a starting point? Um, so in our entire history of coaching and guiding candidates through the entire process, we have never seen Amazon walk back on offers because candidates trying to negotiate. There have been all sorts of situations, layoffs, and disruptions to hiring process, but under business as usual, and specifically because the candidate decides to negotiate, there's never been a single offer that's been withdrawn. The only time when an offer will be with or can be withdrawn is for something administrative, like your visa application failed or something. So negotiate in good faith and negotiate with confidence. Now, the success, I guess when you negotiate, you always need to think about how the whole thing works inside Amazon. Because when you're negotiating, you're actually not negotiating with your recruiter, you're negotiating with a system. And to the degree to which the participants of that system, the decision makers, that they would want to go above and beyond to arrange offers that are not automatic, that require them to essentially, quote unquote, fight for the candidate to bring them in, um, that that degree of passion to get you into the company and to get you a better offer isn't automatic. It's something that depends on how well you're interviewed and how well the hiring manager, how much the hiring manager wants to bring you in. And obviously that depends on how reasonable what you're asking for they believe it is to be. So I would say if you're asking to double your salary and coming in as a hiring manager, for example, I would have had a hard time to try and go and fight for that for you. But if you're asking for something that is reasonable and you have some really good solid points to substantiate that plus 25%, that will increase the chances that they will actually go and exert energy and spend energy to come and to get it for you, right? But they're not going to take the offer away. I mean, the worst that will happen is it's just going to tell you, well, sorry, this is our last and final offer. Now, how reasonable that plus 25% in itself, I don't really know, right? But if your question is, are they going to take the offer away or not? No, they won't. Anything you'd add, Gigi?
No. I mean, plus 25% seems quite punchy just on a percentage basis, but given I don't know what the baseline is, plus 25% on top of 40,000 doesn't seem huge. Plus 25% on top of 250,000 does seem huge. So to your point, who knows? But yeah, he's right. They're not just going to take the offer away from you. Okay, so just quickly back to Peter, and then I promise I'll pick another question because this is like a bit of a cheat. Peter's saying it's not about technical match; it's referring to what he's calling soft skills, but essentially the leadership principles. So Peter, no, then if you're just talking about leadership principles, if you have to go back 7 years to come up with your best example for customer obsession, I, as an interviewer, am going to be questioning whether you could possibly be strong in customer obsession if you haven't done anything decent for 7 years. I'm being a little bit brutal for the purposes of demonstration, but Definitely not. You want recent examples, because essentially what I, as a hiring manager or a bar raiser or an interviewer, are trying to do is imagine what you would be like if you stepped into my company tomorrow. So if you can demonstrate to me that yesterday you were able to be really, really strong in customer obsession or dive deep or ownership, I can be pretty confident that tomorrow you will still be really, really strong in customer obsession, dive deep ownership. If you have to go back 7 years to find a decent example of customer obsession, then how am I going to be confident that when you arrive in my job tomorrow, you're going to be good at customer obsession if apparently you haven't been good at it for the last 7 years? So, no, the more recent, the better, as far as leadership principles are concerned, for that reason. Okay.
Oh, there's a clarification from A. Should we bring it up? There's apparently a
Yeah, sure.
second.
I've got it for you. Go on, shoot.
So yeah, so that plus 25% increase is apparently to cover the missing bonus and the slight
Uh,
increment, and A expects them to cut it low, so 25 as a starting point instead of 15%. Listen, I'll tell you what, if if you've got some solid grounds, like what it sounds like something that you do have, that you can put across to them and say, look, folks, I have this and this bonus, I'm missing out on this. If you can match that, super excited to join. I just want to make sure that the compensation is fair. Use the word fair, because supposedly missing out on bonus is unfair. But if you can structure it this way, I mean, what the heck? Why not? I
Yeah, I
say
mean,
try it.
that's a good argument, isn't it? It's like I
Yeah.
will literally, I can show you I'm going to be missing out on XK worth of bonus. In all probability, if you're going to argue that you're missing out on bonus, they'll probably give it, if they're going to give it to you, they'll give it to you on sign on. They won't give it to you as a permanent increment on your base pay. But still, if you've got that data point, it's worth throwing it at them.
Yeah.
Okay. How can I identify which interview is conducted by the hiring manager and which is conducted by the bar raiser, unless this information is explicitly provided by the recruiter or the interviewee? I think you mean the interviewer. Just curious if this information is of any use. No, this information is of no use whatsoever. So personally, I would not worry about it at all. Sometimes it's relatively easy to work out who your bar raiser is, but at the end of the day, there's no advantage to you in knowing who they are, because your bar raiser is going to read all of the notes written by everybody. They're going to talk to everybody. So all of the information they will be exposed to and be subject to. They're also the most likely person in the interview process to be willing to change their mind about you, because it's just the nature of the training that you go through as a bar raiser, and because of the amount of experience you have at different debriefs and kind of being exposed to people changing their minds and being open-minded to different information. So I say don't worry about it. Makes no difference. There's nothing you can do that you should be doing any differently to the bar raiser. You should treat everybody as if they are your bar raiser, trying to do your absolute best with everybody. I almost sometimes think it's a bit of a disadvantage when people know who the bar raiser is, because they do behave differently. And then when it comes to debrief, the bar raiser says one thing and everybody else says another. And the bar raiser's like, wow, that was a completely different person to the one that I interviewed. You'd really just want to be consistently excellent across the board when it comes to an Amazon interview. I hand back to you, Yevgeny.
Well, I think it's that time, isn't it?
Oh, is it that time?
I
Do you know
think it's
what?
that time.
Yeah, I need to do some new ones of these. I was saying to Paul a little bit earlier, I'm a bit bored. I haven't done anything creative for a while, so maybe I will sign back up to Jib Jab and do some more of these. We'll see. Right, folks. So we have a little request for you. It's a teeny, teeny, tiny, tiny request. So hopefully you'll be able to do it for us. We obviously put a massive amount of effort into creating this channel for you, coming to these sessions for you, all of the content, the freebies we're going to give you at the end, which you really must stay hanging around for. But we do want something in return from you. It's not much, but it's just a little bit in return, which is when you watch any of our content, please do give it a like, give it a comment, even if you just want to say hi. But please do that, because essentially what that does is it tells YouTube, the algorithm of YouTube, that the content is good content because this person has chosen to engage in it, and that they've managed to target it to the right person because obviously that person has engaged in that content. And what it then does is basically prioritizes our content over some of the other complete codswallop. That is that a word that anyone else understands? I suppose it's a very British word, isn't it? rubbish that is here on YouTube. You'll have seen yourselves, folks. There's so many different channels out there, so much different content, some of it from people who have never even interviewed with Amazon, let alone worked at Amazon before. Other is life changing advice from someone who's been through one cycle of the Amazon interview process. What we bring you is insights from hundreds and hundreds of interviews, both interviewing inside Amazon and also coaching people outside of Amazon. We are confident we do have the best, most comprehensive YouTube channel out there, and we do want to get it to as many people as possible. So please give any stream that you watch a like or a little bit of a comment. So we would like you to practice makes perfect, on this particular stream. So we are going to play you a 30-second little video, which is a little bit of fun, and hopefully that will just give you enough time to give us a little bit of a thumbs up on the video. Just to bear in mind, I can see how many likes there are on the video on my screen here on the left. So if you don't give us a little like, I'm going to moan when we come back. Okay? My mum will tell you I moan all the time for all sorts of reasons. So this is just another reason for me to moan. But going to play it for you now, folks. It can be a little loud sometimes. So if you have headphones on like me, just kind of pop them a little bit further back in your ears without getting them caught on your earrings, which I've just done. And we'll be back in a sec. But please do give us a thumbs up and like the stream.
Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream now. Please like the stream. 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 Like the stream.
You know, I've never noticed the one that's going like this.
I just love that soprano ending at the end. It's just slightly out of sync with the main one, but that is
Oh, is it?
the intentional
Oh.
effect, isn't it? And you can really appreciate it. It's so good.
I think I
Ah,
probably had to probably gargle salt water after I did that. Right.
right. Should I
Let's
pick up the next one?
pick another one. Yes.
Okay, so I think the next one is here from Stephen. Another one. So the question is, during the first interview and loop for the sales position, should I ask for the job or whether you will be put forward to the
Ah,
next round? Should I? But I don't understand. Should I ask?
I do. Yeah. So Stephen's basically saying, um, should I literally say, so are you going to give me the job, or should I say, are you going to put me through to the next round?
Yes, I think. Yeah. Okay, I understand now. Okay, so personally, uh, I wouldn't do it. And the reason why I wouldn't do it is because, um, uh, first things first, anything that they say to you as a response, it doesn't really matter because, in most cases, interviewers are being trained not to make those decisions immediately. Amazonians, when you go through the Amazon interview training, you're being told that as a custodian of that interview training, you need to make sure that you're as objective as possible, even if you're just a single interviewer, which is why, um, when I was a hiring manager, I would never been able to even respond to this question. If you asked me, I would say, you know what, I have no idea at the moment. I need to think about it and to read through my notes and all that. And personally, I would probably be a little bit annoyed because I'm going to be put on the spot. Um, Me being annoyed probably wouldn't make a huge impact on my decision to progress you or not, because if you raise the bar, you raise the bar, and if you didn't, you did. But to be honest, if you want the interviewing process to go as smoothly as possible, I would personally avoid doing that. But I don't know, Gigi, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't see that there's any constructive value in asking that question, because put you forward to the next round. If I said no, what would you do? Right. Are you going to do the interview all over again? No. If I said yes, what difference does that make to you? Nothing. No action you can take. So I just don't think it adds any value. I know what you're saying because I see this over the web everywhere, mainly with salespeople saying, ask the interviewer, is there anything that is making you doubt that I'm good for this role? And then they'll tell you, and then you argue the case as to why they're wrong. I've very rarely seen anybody successfully or heard anyone successfully convince someone who's already made up their mind that they're wrong. People just dig their heels in when you tell them they're wrong. So I don't see the point. I don't think it's going to help you in any way, shape, or form. They're going to decide what they're going to decide, independent of whether you push them to try and tell you their decision now or whether they make it later. Right. I'm just going to pick this one
Exactly.
from Rosie. How much of certifications weigh in for program manager roles? So I can't give you an empirical answer to this. I'm not sure Yevgeny can either, because I suspect there isn't one. I've never seen anywhere in any materials inside Amazon any direction that tells anyone who's hiring program managers that they have to weight having a certificate at 82% or 45%, because conceptually that just doesn't work. There's no weighting of anything. So I think it's going to be very much down to the hiring manager's personal preferences, and they'll then just pass those on to the recruiter. For example, as a tenured marketer, I had no interest whatsoever in marketing qualifications. I would not choose a candidate with a marketing qualification over a candidate without a marketing qualification. That was personally my subjective opinion based on experience, whereas I've had other colleagues who had marketing qualifications themselves and considered marketing qualifications to be very important in the people that they hired. So there is no empirical answer to that. Now, I think it's very, very dependent on the attitude of the hiring manager. Feel any different, Yevgeny?
No. All the only thing I would say is for program managers, in some cases, I have seen the word PMP being used in job descriptions, and that I think speaks to the bleed between the program and project manager roles and some of the misnomery that happens there. To be honest, as a hiring manager, even if I was hired into a job at Amazon where knowing SQL was one of the requirements. I didn't know any SQL, so yeah, it's all down to the hiring manager.
Mm. Do you want to pick the next one?
Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. So let's see. Scrolling down. Okay. Do you have any rough numbers on what percentages of folks move through each round of interviews? No, we don't. I'm sure Amazon must track it at some point in time within the appropriate functions, but as someone who used to hire, you don't see these things, and quite frankly, it's nothing that I've ever kind of pondered. I would even struggle to give you a rough estimate. Would you
Yeah,
give
I
a
have a
rough
rough
estimate?
estimate.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
okay,
have a rough
okay,
estimate.
go on then.
So Yevgeny's absolutely right. It is not reported widely. I agree with him. It's probably tracked somewhere quite high up the food chain, but it's not something that they ever chose to communicate, probably because they never felt it was particularly important. And I think they're right. That said, I did a little bit of work myself when I was bar raising to track that type of data, both hiring within my organization and speaking to my hiring managers. And then I have since done a straw poll, let's call it, with recruiter contacts that I have that are still Amazonians. So my experience was broadly, and this is not empirical in any way, but this is just a gut feel, 1 in 10 would make it through round 1. If there was a round 2, that would then go up to about 2, 3 in 10. And then when you get through to loop, I would say chances of getting a hire were probably around 50 to 30% of people at loop, entirely dependent on the role, the job function, etc. But as you would imagine, the fallout at the top of the funnel is absolutely enormous. And the bigger the fallout at the top of the funnel, the lower the fallout at the bottom of the funnel, obviously, because you're passing better quality candidates through to the final stages and therefore increasing their probability of a hire.
Makes sense.
Um,
Do you want to take the next one?
yeah. Um, So Pradeep is asking, I really like that profile picture. I don't know why. That quite appeals to me. What questions should we ask at the end of a technical interview? All right, so um, if it's specifically intended as a technical interview and you expect to have behavioral slash wider interviews later, I would focus on the technical side of things personally, because you've been talking about the tech. So I would, if it was me, start covering off any questions that I had about the technology that supported the work that I was doing. If you have burning questions that are on the non-technical side of things, where you want to kind of understand a little bit about the team or the hiring manager or the culture — I hate the word culture — you can pretty much ask anything that you want. But I guess my gut would be, if I was in a technical interview, then it would make sense to start asking some technical questions at the end and then bleed into some non-technical questions that were burning um, platforms for me that I really wanted to know, to help me decide whether I even wanted to move on to the next stage. Okie dokie, you want to pick the next one?
Yep. Okay, so another one from Pankaj. I'm still not sure about the level for which I'm interviewing for. The recruiter didn't answer it, and when I asked my hiring manager during the phone screen, he said he's not allowed, presumably to share it. And is it really common, or am I missing anything? Look, a level is an internal designation and an internal kind of grade of job at Amazon. It's something that obviously we discuss and candidates discuss amongst themselves, because sometimes it's shared, sometimes it isn't. But technically speaking, if the hiring manager believes that they aren't allowed to share the level of the role, then that's what they believe in. I can't recall necessarily whether there's an official policy of specifically prohibiting people from sharing role levels, but given that when you are someone who's a hiring manager at Amazon and you go through the training and they do tell you a whole bunch of things that you are not allowed to share with candidates, it wouldn't be unreasonable to assume that one such hiring manager might have just clocked or cached in their mind that they're not allowed to share the level of the role. So I don't think it's but again, what I'm trying to figure out is, why is that information critical to you? Presumably, if the role is interesting to you and if the compensation is worth your while, then I guess what's the problem. The other thing is, you can probably work out the level of the role for most jobs by reading its title. So I'll ask Gigi to weigh in on this, but also while she's weighing in on this, if you want to share with us the title of the role you're interviewing with, maybe we can help. Let's see. Well, what do you think, Gigi? Do you recall any policies specifically prohibiting the discussion of internal job leveling?
I do not recall any such discussion. I don't recall anything in the materials that I was trained with. I don't recall anything in my bar raiser training that says that. But it's not unfamiliar as a response, if that makes sense. I feel that there's probably some kind of unspoken mythology that has permeated through the process, where somebody once said you're not allowed to, and then someone else said it, and then someone else said it, and suddenly it became an unwritten rule. So I don't think I have never been trained that I'm not allowed to do that, but I've seen many recruiters and hiring managers refuse to do it. But I think, to your point, Evgeny, in the main, it really doesn't matter. If the compensation is what you want and if the role is what you want, then who cares what the job title is? But having said that, some people do care what the job title is. And to some people, it is important that they are now a director where they were a senior manager before, or a level up from the level that they're at before. But there's nothing you can do about it. If someone's not going to tell you, they're not going to tell you. And then you're just going to have to wait until the end when they make you a final offer. And they may give that information up when you're at final offer stage, because you're going to have an actual job family code set against your name in your contract, etc. So at that point, I guess it would be exposed to you. But personally, I wouldn't worry about it too much. Okay, so I'm going to pick this one. Which round/person is more critical to the selection? I'm going to give you a facetious answer and say the final round is more important. But that's not what you mean, and I know it. Look, there is I mean, in theory, there are people that are more critical, which of course is the hiring manager and the bar raiser, because no one else in the process is making the decision. There are only two people making the decision in this, and that's the hiring manager and the bar raiser. So I guess if you're thinking about it in extremely binary terms, then those two are the people that are the most critical ones in the selection. But I guess that presumes that they are not influenced by other people, which they will be. So the process of decision making is based on an aggregated view of all of the data gathered. So you can't just impress those individual people, and not impress everyone else and expect to make it through the process. Doesn't work like that. You have to impress everybody, because the hiring manager and the bar raiser's decision will be made up based on the evidence that everybody has gathered and the opinions of everybody. So there you go. Puristically, hiring manager and bar raiser, but at the same time, everybody, because hiring manager and bar raiser are massively influenced by everybody. Want to pick the next one,
Yeah.
Yevgeny?
So here's one from S. Rosie. How do hiring managers differentiate resumes that are genuine with metrics and ingenuine metrics? Does having a lot of metrics make it less genuine or give that impression? So as someone who used to drink from the hose on resumes in the queue, and you get those profiles in the queue, I didn't have a specific methodology, or I haven't crystallized it, by which I would have a red flag sort of coming up for metrics. And to be totally honest with you, unless the metrics that the candidate included came across ridiculously favorable to what they're doing, I wouldn't have any red flags. Sorry, there's no basis for me to have any red flags on that resume. And I think that in a lot of cases, for me personally, the whole idea, or I would work up the idea on whether the candidate is faking stuff or not faking stuff, not just by looking at the resume, but also by phone screening the candidate if the candidate made it to the phone screen. That being said, throughout my entire interviewing history, in any of the companies that I worked with, I've had maybe one or two cases when I had a serious red flag about someone else's resume, and maybe a couple of more handful of cases when the person would make it to an interview with me, and I'd be like, I just really don't believe what the candidate was sharing there. In all other cases, I've been very blessed to have had genuine interviews. To your other question is specifically kind of how do we differentiate with metrics that are genuine or not? I don't have a way to differentiate. It's a gut feel. Does having a lot of metrics make it less genuine or give that impression? Not necessarily, not to me at least. I think every hiring manager is different. So to me, having metrics in like I have metrics in every single accomplishment, maybe except one. So maybe I would have one, at most two accomplishments under every job that do not have metrics in terms of specific numbers, overachieved under or whatever. But although everything else, I have some sort of metric in there, and I've never had a single bit of feedback from anyone else that my resume somehow did not seem genuine. But Gigi, you were a hiring manager and an interviewer, and you've seen lots of resumes. How would you respond to this?
I Yeah, I'm aligned with you in the sense of it's impossible to tell whether they're genuine metrics or ingenuine metrics on a resume. That's impossible, other than, to your point, if they seem wildly outside the realms of possibility. So us being marketers, if someone told me that they got a 76% conversion rate, I'd be like, I don't believe that for a second. But if they told me they had a 15% conversion rate and that was a lie, I would probably fall for it, because 15% seems a reasonable number. So I don't think there's anything that you can do at a resume level to identify whether metrics are genuine or ingenuine. I also feel that the number of metrics on the resume is also kind of not really an indicator. There are some people that just their companies track everything, and they can put tons of metrics in, and some companies where they don't track everything, and therefore you'll have fewer metrics. So one doesn't draw conclusions at that point. It's only when, to your point, when you get into interview and you start to meet the person and talk to the person, where the mismatches between what they seem to have claimed in the resume and what their stories seem to be suggesting in the interview starts to bubble up. There are other situations where I've kind of unpicked someone's claims for impacts by just challenging them on their measurement methodology. So candidates have claimed to have achieved a certain outcome, and it seemed to me slightly implausible that they would be able to track that outcome. And I've challenged them and said, okay, what was your measurement methodology? And they weren't able to respond to that. So one thing I would say, I guess, is if you are using metrics, be sure to be able to tell your interviewer exactly how you measured that metric so that they can have absolute confidence that it is indeed a genuine metric. Shall we move on to the next one?
Yeah, do you want to pick the next one?
I am. I'm going to jump over one really, really quickly. In fact, I might jump over a couple really quickly because they're just quick answers. So, Sun B, how are security, governance, risk, and compliance roles interviewed? They're not very technical, but does require understanding. How should you prepare for it? So, if you weren't here at the beginning, Sun B, Yevgeny and I are not and could not possibly be functional experts in every single role. So, we don't know exactly how every single role will be interviewed with the mix between functional and behavioral, and specifically what type of methodologies they would use to test functional. So all we can tell you is that you will definitely be tested on leadership principle based questions. Whether they would then test you on specific functional questions and ask you hypothetical questions, or ask you to give them specific examples for projects to be able to test your knowledge, don't know, couldn't tell you. Best person to ask is the recruiter, because they will be able to speak directly to the hiring manager. All right, next one then. Okay, so you're looking for an L7, and your question is whether it's an L6 or an L7. He said you're not allowed to answer. Okay, well, it doesn't really matter whether it's L4, L5, L6, L7. Our advice is still the same. I guess what I would say is the job titles for L7s tend to be principal something something something, or senior manager something something something. There are roles where that nomenclature doesn't work. There are very kind of specific technical roles or niche roles where they just come up with these random names that do not fit the Amazon nomenclature. So simply because your job title isn't principal something or senior manager something, it doesn't necessarily mean it's not an L7, but those are the main nomenclatures for L7 roles. Okay, I will now properly do one. Evgeny. Okay, I was asked initially for compensation by HR, which I think the role is L5, but later got to know it's an L6. Is there a chance to negotiate higher once I got an offer? Yeah, there's always a chance to negotiate. So what you could simply say is, once you get the offer through, come back to them and say, okay, I have this extra piece of information, which is, I believe this is a level above the level of the role that I originally thought it would be. Do your research on what the market range is for that new level that you hadn't understood originally, and share with them, this is my understanding of the market range. Could you please reflect the compensation based on this new information? But there's always a chance to go back. You just have to know when to draw the line. Generally, they'll tell you when to draw the line, which is, this is our last and final offer. I cannot do anything more for you. Then you know you've gone about as far as you can go. Do you want to pick the next one, Yevgeny?
Yeah. So there's one from Valaji. I'm going for my final loop and nervous a bit. So how can I prepare myself confidently in the interview? So Balaji, for most people, preparation that follows something that we recommend to everyone, it tends to help with confidence, because when you've done the work, then you acquire more situational confidence. I can't comment on your core confidence, because core confidence is just your human quality. Some people are genuinely and basically fundamentally more confident than others. So putting that one aside, here's what I would suggest. So, and by the way, I can only recommend stuff for behavioral interviewing. But in order to be fully prepared for behavioral interviews, you need to start by trying to understand what leadership principles they are likely to interview you on. You get that information either from the recruiter, or you can extract it from the job description. In order to extract it from the job description, you either watch the video or videos in a YouTube channel where Gigi shows you how to do it. And if you can't do that, then you can essentially pay Gigi. She runs a service where she can do it for you. So that's the first thing. So you need to know which ones out of the 16 they're going to interview you on. Step number 2, you need to really understand what behaviors Amazon is looking for you to demonstrate in the interview stories you're going to be telling them for those leadership principles that Amazon is likely to interview you on. And the way to get that is fundamentally from the products that the products that we offer. So we designed Amazon Interview Success System specifically to for you to do that, where we break down every single leadership principle in the behaviors that the interviewer is looking for. You can also do it by trying to decipher the definitions of leadership principles themselves, but some of them are more cryptically written than others. So that's why we've designed our system to help kind of break through that barrier. Once you understand what those leadership principles stand for, you need to identify situations in your professional past that map to those leadership principles, and then you need to convert those situations into stories that demonstrate the required behaviors using a very impactful storytelling framework. So if you're just doing it by yourself, you can use STAR. If you're with us, if you're one of our course students, we will give you a much better, much more high impact interview answer framework. We just call it the D1C interview answer framework. Then you need to practice. Once you've built your story bank, you need to practice it. And you need to practice it. Again, if you're kind of DIYing everything, then practice with friends, partners, colleagues. Practice with a camera. Record yourself telling your stories. It's very useful.
Watch yourself back, definitely.
Watch yourself back. Yeah. Practicing in front of a mirror, useful, but not as useful as recording yourself and watching yourself back. If you're with us, then I guess you can always book one-on-one coaching sessions with us. You can also use our AI story review feature, which is packed inside the Amazon Interview Success System, where we give you enough credits to run most of your story bank through our AI evaluator, and so it will essentially tell you what you need to improve. And then practice as much as you can with whoever you can find. So that's basically what it is. And to be honest, if you the problem we find with most candidates who aren't confident and aren't prepared is that they just haven't put the time in. So if you put the time in, that will help with confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Yevgeny, we are now at time. So we did say we were going to give the folks some amazing freebies. So you're at the beginning of the thing as far as I can tell. There we go, folks. This always makes me laugh because it just goes, who knows what direction this whole thing is going in. So,
It's there,
right,
doesn't matter.
just down there somewhere, folks. Right, okay, folks. So please go and head to that URL and pick up some seriously amazingly cool stuff that we're giving you for free. So let me quickly rattle through what they are. The first thing is we give you a little bit of a sample of the Amazon Interview Success System that Yevgeny has just described there. We focus this little sample on customer obsession. It basically breaks down all of the facets or the different types of customer obsession there is, and then essentially helps you understand what the interviewer is actually looking for in your customer obsession answer. We chose customer obsession as this little tidbit for you because pretty much everyone has to be impressive and be strong in customer obsession. So everyone's going to get value from that particular little bit of the course. And then in addition to this, Yevgeny will, in the little course, gives you a little bit of a guided tour to our AI story review tool, which is a tool that we built. It's an AI tool. It's basically, we've trained it on Yevgeny and my knowledge and experience on assessing people's interview answers, train that into a ChatGPT model, and effectively you put your answer, into the tool, and we spit you out a PDF report that essentially tells you what I would tell you or what Yevgeny would tell you if you gave us that story. So that's a freebie for you to have. Another freebie at the end of that is a list of plausible Amazon interview questions. This is so valuable, and I can't believe that more people don't take it up. So there are tons of interview questions around the web, Glassdoor, various other places. Most of them are absolute crud, and a lot of them are absolute crud because someone once wrote a list that was crud and then got copied by someone else who just copied the same crud, and then someone else copied that, and then suddenly this was a master list, which is bonkers, right? So we used to have people coming to us all the time who had prepared answers for questions that no one would ever ask at Amazon. So we decided we would create our own list of plausible questions. They're not the exact Amazon interview questions because we can't share those with you for contractual reasons, but we've come up with our own version of questions that are really plausible and are really, really good for practicing on. So you can't use them to prepare your exact answers because you're not going to get those exact questions, but it is very good to just practice how you would respond in the moment to being asked a question, which is a likely question to be asked. So please go and take that. And then the last thing you're getting for free is access to our Heartbeat community. It's basically a community of, I don't know, almost 5,000 people now who are or have at one point interviewed at Amazon. You can make buddies, you can do mock interviews with each other. There's also another AI tool in there, which is basically a chat bot that you can ask questions of about the Amazon interview process. And we have just trained that on all of the YouTube content. So if you have a question, you wanted an answer to something and you couldn't be bothered to trawl through the 300 odd videos that are now on our YouTube channel, you can just come and ask Andy, who is our bot on our Heartbeat community, and he will tell you the answer if it exists in our YouTube channel. And I think that's it. So on that note, folks, thank you very much for coming today. Happy Labor Day in if you're in the US. If you're not in the US, happy September. The best people on the planet are born in September, just so that you all know. That includes myself and my 2 children. So happy September, everyone. If you have an interview coming up, we have our fingers very, very tightly crossed for you. And yes, please do, if you're watching any of our content, just do us a little favor in return for all of the effort we put in for you, and give it a like or write a little comment, and we will comment back. Okay, thanks, folks. We will see you next week. Take care.
See
Stay
you next
safe.
week.
Bye.
Bye.